After spending months training a new hire, I overheard him laugh with HR, saying, "She's like a training wheel, cute, but useless once you actually know what you're doing." I stayed silent, smiled when he asked for help the next week, and let him crash and burn spectacularly in front of the executives when I wasn't there to save him. I've been working in logistics at a mid-sized company in Columbus, Ohio for almost 10 years. Not flashy work, but it pays well and I know what I'm doing. People come to me when stuff breaks. I've trained more new hires than I can count. Most of them end up being decent coworkers. A few I still talk to. I never had a problem sharing what I know. That changed with Drew. He got hired last year. Management said he'd be shadowing me for a few months to get up to speed. Said he was high potential. I wasn't bothered. Like I said, I've trained people before. I figured he'd be like the rest, ask questions, make mistakes, get better, move on. But Drew was different. First day, he showed up in a slim suit like he was heading to court instead of a warehouse-side office. Smiled a lot. Asked me how long I'd been here, and when I told him, he said, "Wow. That's rare these days. Good for you." That "good for you" rubbed me the wrong way. Like I was a museum piece. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Showed him our system, taught him how we manage carriers, walked him through customer logs, back orders, vendor contracts, everything. He listened, took notes, nodded a lot. But he had this thing where he pretended to understand when he didn't. And when I corrected him, he acted like he already knew. He made basic mistakes. Entered wrong tracking codes. Sent shipping updates to the wrong vendors. Skipped steps in the audit trail. And each time, I covered for him. Fixed the reports. Sent out corrections. Never made a big deal about it. Just quietly cleaned up behind him. After about 6 weeks, he stopped taking notes. Started checking his phone in meetings. Talked like he'd been there forever. At one point, he told someone from another department, "I'm basically running our logistics team now." I laughed it off when I heard about it. Figured maybe he was just trying to sound important. Then one Thursday night, everything changed. It was after 6 p.m. I was still at the office handling a reroute issue for one of our freight partners. I passed by the break room to grab a water and heard voices. Drew and someone from HR, Megan, were in there. Laughing. Drew said, loud and clear, "She's like a training wheel. Cute, but useless once you actually know what you're doing." Megan laughed. "That's messed up." He went on, seriously. "I don't even need her anymore. She was good for showing me the basics, but now she just slows me down." I stood just outside the doorway, frozen. My ears were burning. My face went cold. Cute? Useless? I'd been staying late, coming in early, helping him make sense of a system that took me years to understand. I'd held his hand through every major report, every difficult call, every technical process. And this was how he saw me? I didn't say a word. Just walked back to my desk. Finished my work. Drove home. Sat in my driveway for a good 10 minutes staring at the steering wheel. I felt embarrassed. Angry. Stupid. I didn't tell anyone what I heard. I didn't tell HR. I didn't confront him. I made a choice. I would stop helping. No drama. No warnings. Just silence. Let him figure it out on his own. The change started small. When he emailed me to review a vendor contract draft, I replied, "Looks like you've got it under control." When he asked me to double-check his numbers before the weekly logistics meeting, I said, "You should be good." When he forgot the carrier login credentials, I shrugged and said, "You might have them in your notes." He didn't catch on. He thought I was just being hands-off. Then came the quarterly executive review. This meeting is a big deal. Every department head and executive sits in. We go over logistics performance, delays, cost savings, vendor issues, everything. Normally, I prep the materials. I help whoever's presenting. But this time, Drew decided he was running the show. He actually said to me the week before, "I'm gonna lead the presentation. It's time I show them what I've got." I nodded. Sounds good. He never asked for help. And I didn't offer any. The day of the review, he walked into the conference room looking proud. He had slides printed out. Fancy visuals. He wore a new watch, probably thought it made him look more important. The presentation started okay. Then it went downhill fast. He misrepresented our success rate for on-time shipments. Claimed we hit 95%, we didn't. It was 82%. Then he cited numbers from a process improvement plan that hadn't even launched. I watched Marcus, our team lead, shift in his seat. Drew had basically stolen one of his projects and taken credit for it. And then came the questions. What happened with the Kansas City rerouting Q2? The COO asked. Drew hesitated. We handled it with standard rerouting procedure. Which is wrong. That delay was a total mess that took me 36 hours, 2 late-night warehouse calls, and a manual override. Drew didn't even know it happened. Then the CEO chimed in. Can you walk us through the documentation changes from June? Drew fumbled. Yeah, we optimized the formatting to reduce confusion. Another exec looked at him. Who led that change? Drew smiled. I handled most of that myself. The CEO turned to me. Is that true? I looked up and said, no silence. No one said a word. Not even Drew. They wrapped the meeting quickly after that. By the end of the week, Drew wasn't working on any major projects. Word spread fast. He'd been reassigned. Not fired, our company rarely does that, but shuffled to a background support role in a smaller branch team. Quiet, invisible work. Nobody said it out loud. But everyone knew. And I never had to say a word. I kept doing my job. The same way I always have. But when management asked if I could train the next new hire, I said, not this time. They didn't push it. And Drew? He still works here. But now he avoids me in the hallways. Doesn't speak. Doesn't look me in the eye. He knows. I thought it would end there. Thought he'd shrink away, keep his head down, and maybe learn something from it. But Drew didn't take the fall quietly. A couple of weeks after the exec review disaster, things started shifting. Small things at first. I noticed certain files I had updated were suddenly reverted. Reports I submitted were getting flagged for missing information even though I double-checked everything. A shipment confirmation I sent out mysteriously went missing, and the client blamed us for the delay. I looked into the logs, someone had accessed the system using my credentials and deleted the backup entry. I keep my passwords secure. Always have. But Drew had been shadowing me for 3 months. He saw where I stored things. What my habits were. If he wanted to mess with my work behind the scenes, he could. I started making backup copies. Screenshots. Email threads saved off network. I didn't tell anyone what I suspected yet. I needed more proof. Then I got a formal warning from HR. It was a short meeting with Megan and someone from compliance. They said there were concerns about my recent accuracy. That I had missed several key updates and had a declining performance trend. I almost laughed. Instead, I just asked, who brought this to your attention? They wouldn't say. But I already knew. Drew was trying to get back at me. Quietly. Cowardly. He couldn't fix his image, so now he wanted to drag mine down. I sat there and smiled politely through the whole HR talk. Took the paperwork. Signed it. Then I went back to my desk and got to work. Over the next few days, I pulled logs, backup files, internal access timestamps. I compared user IDs. I even asked a friend in IT to help me dig into metadata. Every time a report went missing or a file got corrupted, it lined up with one of Drew's login sessions. It was sloppy. Amateur sabotage. But I wasn't ready to go to war just yet. I needed something bigger. Something he couldn't talk his way out of. Then came the quarterly vendor audit. Twice a year, we go through all our vendor contracts, pricing, penalty clauses, SLA performance, etc., and submit a report to our legal team. It's boring but important. Usually I handle most of it. This time, management wanted Drew to lead it, for development purposes. I agreed to help, but only on paper. I told him I'd email him the old templates, the list of vendors, and which contracts needed to be reviewed. I sent everything. I also left out one thing, a note we always include at the top of the summary file, warning legal that vendor 12's contract has a clause that triggers a full renewal penalty if they're removed without a 90-day written notice. It's the kind of thing you only know from years of experience. And the kind of thing that can cost the company tens of thousands if missed. I watched Drew present the audit summary in front of legal and our VP of operations. He was confident again, smirking like he'd already forgotten his last crash and burn. And when he recommended dropping vendor 12 for poor performance, I said nothing. He didn't include the clause. He didn't even mention the notice period. Legal caught it instantly. The VP turned to me. Was this flagged in your notes? I shook my head. Drew didn't ask me to review his final draft. He went pale. Legal didn't yell. They don't need to. They just said, we'll follow up. And follow up they did. 2 days later, Drew was out of our department. Not reassigned this time. Transferred. I don't know what exact story they told him, but he was moved to the data team in a different building. No more vendor access. No system authority. Basically spreadsheet work. I heard he tried to push back. HR said it was for team cohesion. And Megan? She stopped calling me in for performance reviews. Never apologized, but she's been extra polite ever since. But I still wasn't done. Because Drew didn't just insult me. He tried to destroy my career. Quietly. Underhandedly. He crossed a line that I couldn't ignore. And now that he was tucked away in a quiet cubicle across the campus, I had the space, and the time, to dig deeper. I started looking into his past projects. The ones he claimed credit for. The reports he submitted. The numbers he quoted. I had access to everything. And I found more than I expected. Fudged numbers. Duplicate metrics. Even one recycled PowerPoint presentation with data from a completely unrelated vendor. It wasn't just incompetence anymore. It was fraud. Once I realized what I was looking at, I went cold. This wasn't just a lazy guy taking shortcuts. Drew was building a fake track record, boosting his numbers, inflating results, copying from old reports he hadn't written. And worse, some of those reports had already been used in department meetings. Approved budgets. Forecasts. If someone higher up noticed, it wouldn't just make Drew look bad. It could trigger a full audit. People could lose their jobs. Including me, if anyone thought I had covered for him. I didn't plan to protect him. But I also wasn't going to blow the whistle without a plan. I needed to be sure. I needed this to land hard. No room for him to explain it away or pin it on me like he tried before. So I started collecting. Every file he submitted. Every meeting he led. Every line of inflated data that didn't match the raw numbers. I cross-checked reports, pulled archived emails, even found an old vendor email thread where Drew had taken my write-up word for word and pasted it into his own response, without changing a thing. I printed everything. Organized it into folders. Built a timeline. It took me 3 weeks. And during that time, Drew didn't even notice. He had no idea I was watching. From what I heard, he was already bragging to people on the data team about stepping back to work on higher-level strategy. He actually believed his own hype. Then, the twist I didn't see coming. Marcus, our team lead, asked to speak to me privately. He's always been decent. Keeps to himself, does the job right. We've worked together for years, and I trust him. He closed the door to the small conference room and looked serious. Did you train Drew on the Q4 reporting template? He asked. I blinked. No. Why? He sighed and slid a piece of paper across the table. It was an internal memo Drew had sent to the finance team, recommending changes to the forecasting method. Attached was a file labeled Q4 Actuals Template, revised by my name. Except I hadn't touched it. He forged it. He put my name on a file I never opened and used it to suggest changes that inflated our predicted profit margins by almost 18%. If finance accepted it, that number would roll up to leadership, and when the real numbers came in lower, someone would take the fall. And now it had my name on it. I just sat there, staring at the page. Marcus spoke again. I didn't think you made this. It's not your style. But I need to report it up. If there's more I should know, now's the time. That's when I opened my bag, pulled out the folders I'd been collecting, and laid them out on the table. Marcus flipped through them slowly. Didn't speak. His face didn't change. When he was done, he said, "Stay out of this from here on out." "I'll take it from here." I nodded. But I didn't stay out of it. Because Drew had one last card up his sleeve. A week later, HR called me in again. Not Megan this time, someone new. A man I'd never met. Said he was from corporate compliance. He asked about my involvement in document tampering and unauthorized use of reporting systems. I sat across from him, calm. I said, "Do you have the documents in question?" He slid a few printed pages toward me. I smiled. They were the same files Drew had forged. But this time, they had metadata. And I had something better. I pulled out a small flash drive. Slid it across the table. This has the originals, I said. Plus access logs from IT. You'll see I never opened those files until this week. But Drew did. And he listed my name as the author. The man paused. You're saying this was intentional misrepresentation? I looked him in the eye. No. I'm saying it was fraud. And retaliation. And I can prove both. He took the drive and said nothing else. 3 days passed. Then, a company-wide calendar invite hit my inbox, mandatory logistics audit review meeting. Drew's name was nowhere on the invite. But his actions were about to be front and center. And I wasn't done yet. The morning of the logistics audit meeting, I got to work early. I wore my plain gray cardigan. Nothing flashy. Just calm, steady me, like always. The conference room was full by 9 a.m. Not just the logistics team, HR, finance, compliance, and 2 VPs were there. Even the CEO showed up, which never happens for anything short of a major issue. There was tension in the air. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone could feel something was about to blow. They started with a slideshow. The compliance guy I'd spoken with took the lead. He walked through a timeline of reporting irregularities, using neutral words but with a sharp tone. Slide after slide showed mismatched numbers, duplicated charts, unauthorized access logs. Then he dropped the first hammer. This next report was submitted under my name, he said. However, metadata shows the document was authored entirely by a different user. Here's the access log. They flashed Drew's ID on the screen. People murmured. The compliance guy continued, the changes in this report falsely indicated an 18% profit margin that did not exist. If approved, this would have directly influenced Q1 spending. It was caught just in time. That's when the head of finance spoke up. We were one step from acting on this forecast, she said, looking angry. This could have triggered unnecessary budget shifts. Layoffs. The CEO leaned forward. And someone forged a report with another employee's name on it? Compliance nodded. Yes. There's more. Then they started reading emails. Copied emails. Pasted responses. Timestamp comparisons showing Drew had stolen full sections of previous documents, changed the names, and resubmitted them as his own. Some even had my old file paths in the properties. Then they played an audio clip. I froze. It was the break room recording. Someone from facilities had pulled it from the security camera archives after hearing about the investigation. Drew's voice came through the speakers. She's like a training wheel, cute, but useless once you actually know what you're doing. Then laughter. Then more of him, bragging about how he'd outgrown me and was just waiting to move up. No one looked at me. No one had to. Then the CEO turned to Drew, sitting pale and stiff in the corner. Anything to say for yourself? Drew opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His face had gone from red to white. His shirt collar was soaked with sweat. HR handed him a paper. Effective immediately, termination for cause. Falsification of records. Retaliation against a colleague. Misuse of company resources. Attempted defamation. No severance. No references. No appeals. They escorted him out before the meeting even ended. But it didn't stop there. Later that week, word got out that Drew had applied for a senior role at a competitor company. Someone in our finance department used to work there and still had contacts. They sent over a quiet warning, just facts. Not gossip, just files, proof, and a short note, use your own judgment. He didn't get the job. A few weeks later, I got an anonymous email from someone at a staffing agency. Drew had tried to claim discrimination in his firing and filed a complaint to make himself look like the victim. But HR had already provided everything to the review board, recordings, access logs, documents. The case was dismissed in under 2 days. Turns out, the board took special interest in the fact that he'd tried to forge work under a woman's name to cover his tracks. He burned every bridge he had. Now, people ask if I'm glad it's over. I don't say much. I'm still in the same office. Still doing the work. Still not mentoring anyone. But people treat me different now. Quiet respect. I don't need applause. I didn't do any of it for revenge at first. But in the end, I'll admit it, watching him crash and burn in front of everyone? Hearing him squirm when they read his own words back to him? Seeing every smug smile wiped off his face as the truth caught up? It felt good. Not because he failed. But because he tried to break me. And I stayed standing. Quiet. Steady. Strong. No one calls me a training wheel anymore. And if they do? They better learn how to ride without me.